as you lay out, people say, why do you talk about oil? Fossil fuels are dead. Okay, first off, fossil fuels are not going to be dead for decades in many parts of the emerging world. But also, it's not about oil. It's about geopolitics. It's about shifting trillions of dollars around the world and domination in various regions of the world. Now, the Saudis have done a great job of keeping oil prices stable. The problem is they're stable at 40 to 45 bucks. Does anything meaningful happen today that can move that needle?
I think the key thing we're looking for is any signal that they may put on hold plans to actually raise production by 2 million barrels a day at year end. If we think about that historic cut that they did in April when they're in the depths of the price collapse, that was a 9.7 million barrel a day cut. They have been easing off of that. It's now about a 7.7 million barrel a day cut. They are anticipating basically putting 2 million barrels additional on the market come January. That's the key thing to watch for. Last week, you had the Russian oil minister, the Emirati oil minister, basically saying they're going to continue to taper as planned, which is leading to a lot of anxiety because, as you mentioned, COVID-19 cases are rising, especially in Europe and the United States. There are concerns about Libyan barrels coming back. So the question is, does OPEC put on hold plans to raise output?
Yeah, how can they not? Helima, honestly. I mean, they could do it and have $30 oil, right? How can they do that?
I think the path of least resistance, obviously, is to not go forward with that planned increase in December. But again, that said, you had two important ministers out last week basically saying right now they're still on track for that. I think the bigger question is what happens, in 2021. I mean, you talked about the vaccine story. If we did get a working vaccine, that would obviously be supportive, particularly for markets like jet fuel, which remain in the doldrums. I mean, this is an oil market that's being held up by the strength of the Chinese economy. So anything really important in terms of a vaccine would be constructive for oil markets. Stimulus will be constructive for oil markets. But the question is, if we do not get a working vaccine, what does OPEC have to do to basically try to push prices higher? And there's a question about how much more they can do. I mean, countries like Iraq are on the hook to make additional cuts. They are really struggling with that. The Iraqi government has not been able to pay civil servants since September. So the question is Saudi Arabia really going to come in and have to do more work next year?
Well, that's the question. Listen, Iraq, they got to deal with a population that's just trying to keep the lights on literally and feed itself. They need cash flow, whatever. I look Libya, you said, Mike, come on. I look at Venezuela, Helima, and you and I have talked about this a lot. Venezuela is at its lowest oil production since 1928. I mean, it seems impossible to consider that, but it's true. Has Venezuela, you think, finally bottomed out, or do you think there could be a day where literally they just don't produce anything?
I mean, Venezuela is in such, you talk about this being a geopolitical story. I mean, Venezuela is essentially a failed state at this point. And so when we talk about how does Venezuela turn it around, they're going to need a massive reconstruction program. And so the kind of question is, if we did get a change in the White House, would you see some efforts to have some type of diplomatic off-ramp with Venezuela? Another really important country to watch, Brian, is Iran. If you get a change in the White House as well, do you get the U.S. going back into the Iranian nuclear deal? And are we potentially looking at 1 million extra Iranian barrels back on the market in the back half of the year if we get a Biden administration? So there are a lot of geopolitical stories out there that can be really impacted by this election.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.